Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about what's called two-way tables. Basically, it's a way for us to look at information either from a Venn diagram or that's given to us and organize it and then be able to maybe get some questions answered by looking at how we organize that information. So let's take a look at our first example here and kind of get an idea of what a two-way table is and what it tells us. So here's our scenario here. So we took data from 440 students and we put them in a Venn diagram. Basically, we asked them, are you on the honor roll and do you play a sport? And then we made a Venn diagram to show all those pieces of information. So remembering what we know about Venn diagrams, these 115 people are only on the honor roll. These 45 people only play a sport. These 250 people are both. And then we have 30 over here that represent people that said no to honor roll and a sport. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this information up here and we're going to put it down here in this thing that's called a two-way table, okay? Now, what a two-way table does is it basically lists out that same information that I just verbally said, but it shows it in this table. So, for example, the top left spot here says these are people that are on the honor roll and these are people that play a sport. So those would be the people that are on the honor roll and play a sport, which would be this middle spot right here. So I'd say, all right, that's 250 people. This right here are the people that are on the honor roll but do not play a sport. So on the honor roll but don't play a sport, that would be 115 people. Now, the total column you'll see is at the end, and there's also a total row at the bottom. That is the total of whatever these numbers are over here. So if you had more than two columns, let's say you had 3 or 4 or 5 columns, you would add all those up to get the total. So 250 plus 115, that's going to be 365. Now, that total represents the total people for this row. So this is the total number of people that are on the honor roll. There's 365 people on the honor roll, okay? Now, if I go down here, people who are not on the honor roll but play a sport, that would be these people right here. So that would be 45. And again, I could add up this column. I would get 295. That shows me the total number of people who play a sport that are in this column. So it's 295 people play a sport. So that's people on the honor roll, not on the honor roll. 295 total people play a sport. Now, this part right here is going to be people who don't play a sport and are not on the honor roll. That's this number down here. So there's 30 people who do neither. And again, I can add that up and I get 145. That's the total number of people who do not play a sport. I can also add up this row. This is the total number of people who are not on the honor roll, and I'm going to get 75. Now, the bottom right corner, this is sort of like the linchpin of this entire two-way table. This is going to tell you if you did it correctly or not. What you're going to do is you're going to add the total from this column and the total from this row, and they should add to the exact same thing. So, for example, if I add 295 and 145, I'm going to get 440. Okay? When I go over here, if I add 365 and 75, I'm also going to get 440, which means that we did this correctly. Okay, they add up to the same number. This is the total number of people in the survey, which you'll see right here, 440 people in the survey. So I get a lot of information from this two-way table. Here's the total people on the honor roll. Here's the total people not on the honor roll. Total people playing a sport. Total people not playing a sport, and then the total people in the survey right there. And then I get all those individual things that I want. Who plays a sport and is on the honor roll, who plays a sport not on the honor roll, all that stuff. The two-way table tells me all of that, okay? Now, this next problem, I kind of think of these sort of like puzzles, okay? They are using the fact that we know the rows and columns have to add up to the total numbers, and we can kind of use it to fill out some missing information in this two-way table. So, a teacher went around and surveyed the students in their school, and they found that 78 of them had a cell phone and 57 owned a Kindle. And she knows there's 13 kids that do not own a cell phone, but they own a Kindle. 9 students don't own either. We're supposed to fill in the rest of the missing information. So we're going to fill in all the missing spots based off the fact that we know they have to add up to the bottom. So I can fill in this total right away. I know that the 57 Kindles and the 57 people with Kindle and cell phones and the 13 people with Kindles and no cell phones, that'll give me the total people who have a Kindle. If I add those together, I'm going to get 70. So I now know that 70 total people have a Kindle based off of that information. Also can fill in this total over here. These are all the people who do not have a cell phone. If I add 13 and 9 together, I'm going to get 22. That would be the total number of people who own neither a cell phone or don't own a cell phone at all, okay? I also can fill in this spot right here, the no Kindle spot and cell phone spot, because I know how many people with a cell phone own a Kindle and how many people own a cell phone altogether. I can subtract these two to figure out this number in the middle. So 78 minus 57 is going to give me 21. Now I'm off to the races. I have enough to figure out the rest of this information. 21 and 9 for the total people who own no Kindle. That's going to be 30 people. And if I add 70 and 30 together, I get 100, which is the same thing I get by adding 78 and 22. So I must have done this correctly. Okay? So filling in that missing information based off of what I know and the fact that the rows and columns need to add up. The column label total should have the same value as the row label total. Okay, that's kind of what we said, sort of like the linchpin, a way to know if you did it correctly or not. All right. Relative frequency is something that we're going to be finding as well by doing these two-way tables. Okay, the relative frequency is the ratio of the value of the subtotal to the value of the total. Okay, so basically it's a way that we can figure out almost like a percentage of something happening, or what percent of this thing is happening, by dividing the number by the total. So for example, what is the relative frequency of people who only own the cell phone, only have a cell phone? Well, I can look up here and say, all right, cell phone but no Kindle, that's 21 people, and we had 100 people total. Okay, so the relative frequency for only owning a cell phone was 21 out of the 100 people that are here. Okay, 21 out of the 100 only have that, which would be, if we turn that into a percentage, that would be 21%. The next relative frequency, what's the relative frequency for only owning a Kindle? Well, people that own a Kindle but no cell phone is 13, so that would be 13 out of the 100, which is 13%. Okay, so basically you find whatever subtotal you need, you find the total that relates to it, and then you divide those two and you get your answer. Okay, now we're going to look at another problem here. Here's a bunch of 8th graders. They were asked to participate in after-school activities. Okay, do you participate in after-school activities? And they gave these answers, and we're supposed to fill in the rest of the two-way table. So here's what I want you guys to do. Go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try to fill in the rest of this two-way table, and then go ahead and unpause, and we'll talk about our answers together. All right, so I went through and filled in the table. Hopefully you did the same as well. Basically what I did was I started down here with this total number here. I knew that I had 102 and 187, so this number needed to make sure that those added up. So I did 187 minus 102, and I got 85, okay? Once I knew this was 85, I knew that this had to be 45, because 40 and 45 would add up to 85, and then it kind of unraveled from there. These two need to add to 95, so 95 minus 45 gave me the 50 for here. These two had to add up to 102, so 102 minus 50 gave me 52, and then 52 and 40 added up to a 92 total that I put there. Okay, and there we go. We have our two-way table figured out. Now, we're going to go ahead and answer some questions about relative frequency. So, what is the relative frequency of females who are not involved in after-school activities? Okay, so this is related to, if we look at girls who do not participate in after-school activities, there's 45 of them who do not. So we would say, okay, there's 45 out of the 187 total people who do not participate in after-school activities. Now, it says, what's the percentage of the nearest tenth? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my calculator. I'm going to divide these two numbers. So I do 45 divided by 187. I get 0.2406, so rounding the nearest tenth, I'm going to get about 24%. Now, there can be some discussion, and sometimes this can be a little bit hard with relative frequency in terms of what they're really asking us. Okay? And you have to be kind of careful, because I read this as, hey, what is the relative frequency of females who do not involved in after-school activities? I took that as being the total number of people. But you could also read this as, hey, of girls, what percentage of them are not involved in any after-school activities? So then that would in fact be 45 over the 85 total, which will give us a very different percentage, because this is, hey, girls who don't participate in after-school activities, what percent of girls don't do that? Okay, and if I do that division, I'm going to get 53%, which obviously is very different than the 24% we got over there. So you have to kind of use your judgment when you read these problems and say, all right, what are they really asking me? I read this as asking me, hey, 45 out of the total, right? The frequency of girls not involved in after-school activities. But it could be, hey, what's the frequency of girls not involved in after-school activities? Just doing it over the 85, okay? We can see this in the next one. What's the relative frequency of students who are involved in an after-school activity? This one is not as confusing because we don't have that subset of girls that we could jump to. So we can go right up here and say, all right, well, I have the students who are not involved. There's 85 of them not involved. So 85 students are not involved in after-school activity out of the 187 total students who are there. And the percent that would be, so 187, or 85 divided by 187, we get about 45%. Okay? So that's two-way tables. That's kind of what we're looking at, what we're doing with those, either filling in kind of the open spots, the blank spots, calculating relative frequency, being able to pull out information. Hey, how many people, how many boys do after-school activities, how many don't, how many girls, that sort of stuff. You can get all that information from a two-way table. Okay? Thank you all for watching.